It's very rare that we finish up doing our match day videos. I'm talking about a Burnley game here. And I've got something else to say about the game. Normally we get it covered in the 2 or 3 videos we do immediately afterwards. But there's been a few things nagging at the back of my mind because I do think there's quite a few things wrong. Don't get me wrong, I've not changed my belief that I think we'll be safe. I do believe we'll be safe. And I do believe that David Moyes is probably aware of some of the areas of concern. And I think maybe he's waiting to try and address them with transfers rather than actually addressing them with what he's got as a squad at the moment. And that does worry me slightly. Just before going to record this, I've just got the transcript of the press conference, and it sort of confirms what I believe, which is he's sussed out what went wrong. Well, okay, David, you know what's gone wrong. What are you going to do to change it? And I believe his way of changing it at the moment is through coaching. But I believe that probably bodes really poorly for a couple of players in particular. Those 2 players, as you probably could tell from the description of the video, Jack Wilshere and Ben Johnson. Now, just look at the Burnley game. We'll deal with the fullbacks in a minute because I just think it's such a massive issue for West Ham, both now and historically, to be fair. But just look at the situation with Jack Wilshere. Jack Wilshere is a creative player. He passes, he gives and he goes. That's what he does. Now, against Burnley, the midfield by and large wasn't functioning. Yes, Thomas Souček had a good game in as much as he was making a menace of himself inside the box. But you wouldn't call that a midfielder's aerial prowess in the opposition box to necessarily be an integral part of the midfielder's job. No, what's a midfielder's job? Well, it depends what your department is, but it's running, it's tackling, it's passing, it's controlling the game, it's shutting down the opposition, it's any number of things that you think it might be. In terms of the dominating the middle of the park and the shutting down of the opposition, Declan Rice didn't have a particularly good game. Not really what I would call a terminal problem, because he's basically man of the match for most games. He'll be better in the next game. I think that's fine. Not an issue at all. Everybody has a bad game, and Declan Rice has fewer than most. The other area of the pitch, though, is the passing of the football. Now, whilst Declan Rice may march up the pitch and play a few nice passes during the game, it's not really his job. He's not a playmaker. He's not going to dictate the tempo of the passing. That job, or as far as I could see it, so for instance in the previous game, a Newcastle game, take it for instance, would have been Manuel Lanzini and Fornals' job. They would basically dovetail between the left and the centre, and as you would see from the goals that we scored, particularly when Paulo Fornals would play that ball in between the channel between the fullback and the centre back for Jarrod Bowen to run in. Jarrod Bowen would cross over and Mikel Antonio would pop the ball in. It's an incisive pass, but not just that. The basic passing, the one touch, the two touch, the easy passes, that's his job. That's what Fornals is in there for. He's not in there for his pace. He's there for his passing. He's not somebody that particularly dribbles past everybody. He's not in there for his tackling. Against Burnley, it was quite clear that it wasn't working for him. There was no space for which he could operate, but also he wasn't doing it particularly well. I'm pretty sure his passing stats would be very, very far down. So at that point, when you get to that point in a game, and I'm talking about David Moyes here, and you decide that your tactics are not, your tactics are probably not working because the person you've put in one of those jobs is not functioning correctly, then take him out and put somebody else in. Fornals isn't passing well, take him out. Now, I guess you've got at least 2 players you could put in there. You could put Lanzini in, you could put Wilshere in. At a push, you could put Mark Noble in, but it's a little bit too far advanced for him. But he did nothing. Fornals played the whole game. Now, I'm more inclined to believe that Lanzini gets another chance, because Lanzini did well for him before when he did the partnership with Marko Arnautovic. Lanzini gets another chance. But I just think for Wilshere it's over. Because if you can't get in the team when the guy that's in the midfield to do the passing is out on his arse, he's blowing, he's got no fitness, he can barely run, and the very thing he's in there to do, which is pass, he's not been able to do anyway. If at that point, particularly when you've got the luxury of 5 substitutions, you still can't get on the pitch, I think if you're Jack Wilshere, you probably think, well, that's it. I'm not getting on at all. Now, I'm quite sure that the 100 grand a week will be some form of comfort, but unless something drastically changes for Norwich, and it would take Moyes to change massively for that team to change, and he does need to change it because everyone looks knackered, by the way. Unless he does, then I just think Wilshere's days are numbered as a player under David Moyes. Probably not the biggest issue in the world. Well, for Jack Wilshere is, but for the team by and large, as I say, I think we'll be safe anyway. But there is another area of the pitch where that story is absolutely true. And it's at fullback. Now, you've got to remember that Ben Johnson had made his debut against Manchester City. In fact, he's played against Manchester City twice in the Premier League. Both times at left-back. By trade, he's a right-back. But he has operated, the only times he's played for us in the Premier League have been at left-back. Even though we've not seen very much of him, I think it's fair to say he is a fullback that can operate at left-back or right-back. I think if I was Ben Johnson now, and Gaki has gone out the door, Zabaleta is no longer there, I'd probably be looking at those 2 fullbacks, at Ryan Fredericks and Aaron Cresswell, and thinking to myself, if I can't get into the team now, when it's this bad, I ain't ever getting into this team. And quite frankly, I wouldn't blame him if he just asked for a move, if he instructed his agent to ask to move elsewhere. Because this is it. This is his best chance. Because they are awful at the moment. You couldn't get any worse at the moment than Ryan Fredericks and Aaron Cresswell. It is a blueprint on how to attack us. If you want to play against West Ham and you want to know how to win against West Ham, the blueprint is there from this game, from games before, going back a long, long time. Get us down the flanks. Now, if other coaches and managers know it, if you and I know it, I expect David Moyes to know it. And David Moyes does know it, because I'm going to read you his comments in just a second. Then why not do something about it? Because, quite frankly, in the review we discussed how Ryan Fredericks turned his body away and very much got his head out of the way and allowed the cross to come in. Aaron Cresswell, well, who knows what Aaron Cresswell was doing? That was him trying to defend inside the box. You've got to remember, this is somebody who at times under David Moyes has played as the third centre-half in a back 3. In the previous games, it was Aaron Cresswell not being able to stop the cross coming in. So basically what Frederick was guilty of, which is not stopping the cross coming in, Cresswell is also guilty of that as well in previous games. When that's happening, it doesn't get any worse than that. Burnley, as Gio rightly said in the review, Burnley were targeting Ryan Fredericks. And they really didn't need to target him in that sense anyway, because you could have gone down the right, you could go down the left. Actually, it's open season, but down both sides. But why not stop it? Do something that actually stops it. Make a change. Because I think I'd be looking at that and saying, do you know what? Nobody can do any worse than that. Do you know what, son, Johnson? Get on. We're not talking about some young slip of a lad here, by the way. He's a big, strong bloke. Fast, skillful. I just don't understand. What are we worried about? Positional sense? Well, the others clearly haven't got it either. That is not committed. And it wasn't just the overall, it wasn't just that performance from Fredericks. Fredericks miscontrolled the ball. He couldn't head the ball. He kept on kicking it out of touch. He was caught in no man's land, didn't know whether to overlap, didn't know where to go inside. Didn't have any positional sense whatsoever. So even if you think that the coaching is going to sort this issue out, clearly it isn't. Now, I'm aware that David Moyes, we definitely know he was interested in Matty Cash from Nottingham Forest. He's a right wing, a right fullback. It's rumoured, we understand, that he's interested in Montiel, who has played for Argentina twice. I think he plays for River Plate. Gonzalo Montiel, that's the one. And as we understand it, the guy's name escapes me now, but it's the Wigan left back. Apparently we're after him. It's quite clear that Moyes is after a right back and a left back. In fact, he brought in Randolph, he brought in Souček, he brought in Bowen. I believe if he was allowed another 2 and was given the money for another 2 positions, he probably would have selected a right back and a left back. He knows. He knows what the problem is. But I don't understand why he's waiting for a transfer to sort it. Give the young lad a go. I don't think he will. And that's why I think it probably does spell the end for Ben Johnson. Because as I say, if he can't get in now when it's terrible and at its worst, what choice is he going to have when we spent 10 million on a fullback and we've got somebody else? Basically, we've got players in those positions who David Moyes actually fancies. Basically, Ben Johnson ain't going to play. Jack Wilshere ain't going to play. And I think if we were doing well, I would say, do you know what? Fair's fair. You know what? We're playing well. Quite frankly, they can't get into the team because the team are doing okay. That's not the case. They deserve their chance. When the team are struggling, particularly in their positions, they deserve a go. I mean, he said, I was disappointed with a goal. We didn't do particularly well in the middle of the park. They got it wide and we didn't defend the cross awfully well either. Well, that's putting it mildly, but I wouldn't expect him to be as scathing at Ryan Fredericks in public. I'm quite sure he tore into him. He said there are a lot of positives in what we did going forward, but we couldn't score, which is so on and so forth. We made lots of opportunities, but I have to give Burnley incredible credit for the way they defended. The amount of times they blocked it or the goalkeeper made a save, that is true. He said they did a really good job. And I know that's what Sean Dyche's teams do. The whole thing about the Burnley Tactics, we've discussed that in the preview. Go back and watch that if you haven't done so. But I just mean in terms of him highlighting the areas of weakness, because what he's just said there was we didn't defend the cross coming in awfully well. Well, that's the same for almost every game. What are you doing? I would imagine at the moment, bearing in mind looking how knackered the players are, that they're probably not training. Look, if you're playing midweek and you're playing the weekend and then you're travelling in between, there's probably not an awful lot of time for training. A little warm-up and so on and so forth, but not an awful lot. Probably not, well, there's definitely not day upon day to work on a tactical defensive drill. And to be fair, they've just had a month of that while lockdown was on before the season got up and running. They haven't nailed it down then. Another couple of days isn't going to do it. So if your tactics aren't going to do it, if your training is not going to do it, give somebody else a chance. For goodness sake. I do, unfortunately, think that we are going to be in a situation whereby it's just going to be Groundhog Day. I think we've got to hope between now and the end of the season that we pick up enough points or both, that everybody else around us, Watford, Bournemouth, Aston Villa, are so poor that it doesn't matter that we've got these massive frailties within our team structure. Hopefully it gets sorted out long term. But I have a nagging feeling that what we will see, regardless of how they perform, and I've not even brought Masuaku into it, by the way, is going to be incompetent fullbacks not getting a chance. And if somebody is having a stinker in the middle of the park, other people who are perfectly capable won't be getting a chance either. Now, the trick is to always bring your own, because the stuff in here is like tracing paper, quite frankly, and you don't want to... What are you doing here? That's weird. Anyway, since you are here, do us a favour, click on that video over there, and maybe, while you're here, if you haven't already, click that little button down there, press it, and it subscribes you to the channel and you won't miss any more.